Hi. Hi, welcome. And I see Penelope is also connecting. Welcome, Penelope, as well. Hi. So I'm Heather. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've spoken with you before. And we don't really have any kind of formal agenda with these things. It's just a basic open chance for people to pop in and ask questions or have any kind of discussion. So yeah, there's not any agenda other than what you would like to talk about.
Okay. I've got an email from, I'm flipping back and forth because I have an email from a patron. She's returned books through Simply E a couple of weeks ago, and she keeps getting emails saying she's reached her load limit. And you cannot borrow anything. So I'm not sure what's causing that and why she keeps getting it.
Let me double check, Beth, on your configuration. So I don't know off the top of my head, I can't remember your content sources that we've integrated. So it's the first thing I'm checking. So give me a few minutes to dive into this. So I have a good response for you.
We could play the Jeopardy music in the background.
All right, so you have an Overdrive collection, and then we've integrated the 3 Connecticut State Library collections, and of course there's the Open Bookshelf collection. So there shouldn't be an issue in returning the Overdrive titles. So you said the patron is reporting that they've returned titles and they are not able to check out new titles. Do you know if the titles that they've returned are like, do they still appear on the bookshelf as if they haven't been returned, or they didn't say?
I'm not sure. She didn't say. No, she doesn't give me any other information than that. I could go back and ask her, send another email to her and find out.
So the 2 things that would come to mind for me is just if they still appear on her bookshelf in Simply E, then something went wonky with the return because it's still appearing on her bookshelf. If they're gone, then that might be another problem. If they are still there, I'd be curious what the names of the titles are.
Okay.
And the other question is, what titles is she trying to check out that are telling her she's over her limit? So all of these questions, because you have different collections that have different borrowing policies on them, what I'm trying to just determine is it just Overdrive titles that she's having problems with? Is it the Connecticut State Library Baker and Taylor collection that's telling her she can't borrow? So that's why, that's the kind of the logic behind my questions, is trying to figure out, is it all of the titles? Is it just one particular provider that's been integrated that we're having issues with? So any information. Oh,
yeah, I don't know if it makes a difference, but she says she's using the Simply E application.
Yep.
And she returned book 2 weeks ago, and and she doesn't have anything checked out. And it says you can't borrow anything further until you return what you have. The load limit's reached and she can't get anything new.
Okay, so I'm curious what she's clicking. She's trying to check out a book to get that message, I assume.
I guess.
If she has a screenshot, that would be helpful too.
Actually, what she was complaining about is she keeps getting an email telling her that.
So Simply E doesn't send emails. That would be coming directly from Overdrive, I assume.
Okay.
We don't collect any patron information, so we have no way to contact patrons at all.
Okay, so maybe she's confused as to what she's using then.
That's what I'm thinking, because that
Yeah.
sounds specifically like Overdrive, I know collects patron information and would have patrons account or email accounts to be able to send that message to.
Okay.
So there may not be anything checked out in Simply E, but perhaps she has something checked out in Libby or through the Overdrive web app
Okay.
that isn't returned. So maybe checking her or his Overdrive account.
Okay. All right. And I guess my other reason for being here is this all switch over to Palace. I missed some of the other informational meetings, so I don't know anything about what that is and how it's going to happen and what I need to do and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no worries. There hasn't been a whole lot of, you haven't missed a lot, I guess is the first, the first thing I'll
Okay.
say. So the Simply application is built on open source software, which you may or may not know, that was originally developed by the New York Public Library. And so they're going to continue to use and develop the Simply E software for patrons in the New York metro area. Lyrasis is taking that open source software and building and expanding on it. And we've branded that new thing called Palace. So we are just I say it like I'm doing any of the technical coding. I am not. We have hired mobile developers and they are actively creating a new mobile application called Palace. And they are underway right now. And so as soon as we have a replacement for Simply called Palace in the App Store that is stable and working correctly, we will be then reaching out to all of you folks directly and letting you know what the time frame is. Right now, I don't have specific concrete dates, but we're looking at September-ish. It really, as all things with technology, we're not going to move you over until the app is working and available. So targeting September, likely mid-September-ish, probably. So that's a kind of a tentative date. In terms of what it means for you, really, there's nothing required on your end technically at all. Heather can talk to the patron promotional outreach material she's creating to help you communicate to patrons that the change is happening. But that's really all that we would recommend that you do as part of this transition. From a technical perspective, myself and my colleague Tara, who's not here today, will manage the technical transition. We don't need any other information. We already have your ILS credentials, your collections, all of that will remain the same. And from a patron perspective, what they will need to do is just download a new app. Simply E, they can delete the app from their phone if they want, or their iPad or whatever. And they'll just have to download the new app. And then they'll have access to your library as they had in the Simply E app. So I guess the one caveat is they will need to go to the App Store and download this app. There's not a way for us to force patrons' devices to like delete the Simply E app and replace it with Palace, because it is a separate app. So that'll be just like pretty much the one and only step that the patrons will need to take.
Yeah.
Are there any
sorry.
changes? Not like any changes. I think they're limited to 3 books right now. Is that true? Is that going to continue?
So the Palace app doesn't set limits on checkout length or checkout number. That comes directly from the providers that are integrated. So whatever policies you have in place at Overdrive will continue to persist. If you change those within Overdrive's admin portal and enable more than 3 checkouts, then that will be enabled in Palace. Palace just inherits whatever policies are set at the main kind of content provider account level. There's just technically no ability to bypass that. Palace can't say, we're not listening to you, Overdrive. We're going to let patrons check out 20 different things. We have to inherit those policies from the provider. So if you want to change them in Overdrive, they will cascade down into Palace. And I know Brad Bullis at the State Library, who isn't able to be here today, manages the number of checkouts for the 3 statewide collections. that are integrated. So the DPLA Exchange, the Baker and Taylor, and the Biblioboard collection that we've integrated. Heather, did you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about the materials that you're creating for libraries?
Yeah, no, I'm just creating, the basic kind of press release that you can send out to local media, newsletter texts, social media posts, text and images that you can, copy and post, email template, things like that. Is there anything, I would love to know if there's anything that you would normally use, excuse me, to send out to patrons about a change like this, so I can make sure I've covered it if there's anything else.
Yeah, we Facebook and Instagram, little posts, things like that. And then we usually do bookmarks or little postcardy things that we can hand out at the desk. And maybe some like 8.5 by 11 flyers that we can put on our bulletin boards. That's primarily what we use.
Great. So yeah, I've got the Facebook and Instagram stuff covered, and I've got some bookmarks and cards, but I'll make sure I include some posters in that as well,
Okay.
that you can have. Yeah.
Is it going to be dramatically different to use than Simply E, or
No.
fairly simple? Okay.
With the look and feel is going to be exactly the same in terms of selecting a library, a patron inserting their barcode or barcode and pin if your ILS requires both. And the few changes that we're making are hopefully making it prettier. So we've changed some of the icons in the app. We have inserted, seems small, but I'm just so excited about it, the library logo at the top of the catalog. Because previously in Simply E, the library logo was, depending on if you were on Android or iOS, either non-existent or just in a small little area, and we've made it prominent front and center that stays at the top of the catalog, so patrons know that they're in your library's catalog in Palace. So really just kind of small user interface changes at the outset. And then as we move forward in the next year, 2 years, we plan to, now that we control the code, really do a lot of feature development and advancement with direct input from you and other libraries who are deploying Palace. So at the start, it's going to look and feel exactly the same, but we're hoping we can make it even more powerful and better patron experience for your patrons.
Okay. So the other thing I'm a little confused about is you keep referring to Overdrive, and we also have the Libby app that we have. So is Palace using Overdrive as well, and are we duplicating our offerings somehow? Like, do we need both of these, or do we only need one?
That is entirely up to you. So yes, Palace is duplicating all of the content that's in the Libby app and then adding additional content. So the ultimate goal of Palace is to be, for libraries, the one-stop shop reading ebook and e-audiobook, and then maybe other formats in the future app. We realize that is for some libraries a difficult transition. Patrons love Libby, they don't want to switch over to a new app, so you don't have to have one or the other. Patrons can use both. If they check out a title in Libby, it'll appear in Palace. If they check it out in Palace and it's an Overdrive title, it'll appear in Libby. So it's not that the patron even has to choose right now. The benefit of Palace is that because Connecticut State Library is so gracious, they have access to close to 10,000 additional titles on top of your Overdrive collection that the state library is buying, and then a whole host of 10,000 plus open titles from the DPLA. So those are open access titles that have been highly curated by a group of librarians called the Curation Corps that the Digital Public Library of America puts together. So patrons get more content in Palace on top of your Overdrive content.
Is that happening right now with Simply E? Because we found that Simply E doesn't have the selection that our Libby has. So I don't know if if there's something we're not doing correctly, or I
It
don't know.
should have all of the titles. Palace and Simply E right now should have all of the titles that Libby does, with the exception of if you have Kindle only Overdrive formatted titles. Those aren't available in Simply E nor in Palace, but all of the other titles that are in your Overdrive collection should be in Simply E now and should be in Palace as well. So if you have particular examples that you can point to, Beth, send them our way so we can figure out why you're not seeing them.
Well, I just, from my own searching for something to read and using Simply E and not finding anything current or anything that I wanted to read, and finding that those selections on Libby, I don't have an example for you, because I personally, I don't use it often myself. I just use it so I could understand it and explain it to other people. And when I do my statistics, I'm not finding a lot of people using the Simply E. We get everybody using the Libby. Because of that, I've heard people say there's nothing on there that I want to read. So I'm not sure if there's something, I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah, right now, just pulling up the back end of the system that feeds into the Simply app and will feed into Palace. It looks like your Overdrive collection is 3,210 titles, licensed titles. Does that sound right? Do you?
I'm not sure. I don't know the number. I know that we joined Bibliomation's Overdrive.
Okay, well, that would be significant.
That's what we've
that.
subscribed to. Yeah. So that's I think what's confusing me.
Oh, yeah, we don't have that. Was that a recent change, Beth?
Within the past 6 months, maybe less, maybe 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, so we would need to change your configuration, and that would explain exactly why you don't see Overdrive titles, because we don't have your account affiliated with Bibliomation's big Overdrive collection.
Okay. All right.
So since we're on the topic, did you join their ILS as well, their shared ILS?
We're in the process of that, very early stages.
Okay, so we will also need to know when that change takes effect, because it will, if we don't change our configuration, it will break Simply and it will break Palace, because the way that patrons authenticate in the app is they put in their barcode and PIN, which then directly via a technical API confirms that, yes, this is a patron of Canterbury Public Library. And if we're pointing to an Autographics Verso ILS that no longer exists, all of your patrons are going to get error messages in the app. So when that happens, let me know.
Okay.
In the meantime, I will take a note to change your configuration, because that's why you're not seeing content. Do you still have your own Overdrive collection, or was that transition to an Overdrive Advantage?
I think I came in on the middle of this. When I started in December, and we had the recorded books or the previous one all kind of went kaput at the last minute, and I was struggling to figure it all out. And we eliminated something, and whatever that previous thing was, to move to Bibliomation, because that was more cost effective for us.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't think that we own anything anymore. We joined the Bibliomation Overdrive because that was cheaper. And
you got it. Okay.
Right.
Well, we will make that change, and that would explain
RB Digital. That's right. We don't have
RB Digital.
And that went away.
Subsumed by Overdrive. Let me just pull up your library. That would make sense. Why?
Right, because they were they were sending us a big bill, RB Digital, and once somebody suggested that joining Bibliomation's Overdrive would be more cost effective for us, so that's what we did.
Yep, no wonder. I just pulled up your account, and yes, you no longer, the old Overdrive essentially the old Overdrive account that we had configured no longer exists. So all of those titles are no longer, you have no
Right.
Overdrive content because we hadn't configured it to point to the Bibliomation collection. So that
Okay.
would make sense.
Okay.
I'm glad you joined today.
Yes, me
A
too.
huge accomplishment. I will get that. I will get that changed here within the next week, and I'll follow up with
Okay.
Beth.
Thank you.
And like I said, when you get to the point of the ILS switchover, let us know as well. From our end, we already have the Bibliomation ILS configured, so it'll be an easy thing for us to just kind of, essentially, we point your library from your existing ILS to the Bibliomation ILS. So
I think our target date is the end of February for that, but we
Okay.
have our like a planning meeting coming up in September to
Sure.
to start the process. So
yeah, that's no small switch. Good luck
Yeah.
to you.
yeah. Yeah.
On the switch to Palace, the other thing I wanted to note is that we're planning, as soon as our technical team has a more firm timeline on when the Palace app will be available, prior to that, we'll be scheduling a statewide webinar in Connecticut. And
Okay.
essentially, we'll be covering exactly what we said to you today, but we'll have exact dates, letting you know this is when we're going to switch libraries over. 2 weeks prior, we recommend starting your Facebook and Instagram posting and all of that. So I hope that we will be scheduling that webinar beginning of September. But right now we're just kind of waiting on the mobile developers to get done with their work.
Okay. So that's all I have.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to join today.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
That's very
that's a
helpful.
success for sure. Mhm.
So if
Wonderful.
for the patron who's having an issue with that email, if I get the titles, would that help you figure out why she's getting that load limit?
Yes, and I would just
Okay.
confirm that she's getting that error message, if she's getting an error message at all in Simply E, or she's just getting an email from Overdrive that
Okay.
she has checkout limit, reached her checkout limit.
Okay. All right.
And I'll put our support email in the chat as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And of course, I'll put my email in there as well.
Awesome. Thanks so
That's
much
it.
for coming on, Beth.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
glad
you.
we were able to do that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
thanks.
for
Thanks
sure.
for the help.
But don't feel obligated to stay. If you
Yeah.
need to
So
take a lunch.
you're gonna hang out and wait for others?
Yep.
All
Yeah.
right.
Well,
I'm gonna take off then. Thanks so much.